Hey everyone, this is your art teacher, Miss Dressel, and in this video, I'm going to give you some tips on how to do your spooky eyeball art project in Google Drawing. So I'm going to go over the directions and then I'm going to help you make your project. So our essential questions for this project are: how do I make a perfect circle in Google Drawing? And how do I play with repetition? How do I play with size and scale? How do I play with composition using the spooky eyeball motif? So, the things that you need to know how to do for this project is how to make a perfect circle. So, in Google Drawing, to create a perfect circle shape, you're going to click on the shape icon in the toolbar. You're going to click shapes, and when you come over to this shape, it's actually called oval. So it's not a circle, it's an oval. To make the oval a perfect circle, you're going to use your left hand and you're going to press and hold down the shift key. And with your right hand on the trackpad or the mouse, you're going to click and drag. And this is going to help you make your perfect circle shape. So as I click and drag, I hold down the shift key and it keeps it into a perfect circle shape. And then I'm going to let go of shift and clicking. And now I have a filled in circle. So this is how you create a perfect circle. Your spooky eyeball needs a large white circle. This is going to be the sclera part of the eye. I'm going to use this because it's already a perfect circle. When I click on it, I'm going to press on my keyboard Control D, and that's going to duplicate it. To resize it and make it smaller for the colored iris part of the eye, I'm going to press Shift on the keyboard with my left hand, and on my right hand will drag to make the circle smaller. So this is going to be the sclera, the iris and the sclera. So we have the two big circles of the eye. I'm going to duplicate the circle one more time and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. This is going to be the black small pupil of the eye. And I'm going to center it up like that. I have to make one more small circle, and this is going to be the highlight of the eye. So duplicate that and make a little highlight. So the highlight doesn't have to be sitting just in the pupil. The highlight can be sitting across multiple pieces of the eye because it's going to be filled in white. So I have some shapes here and I'm going to start to color them in. So the sclera is the white part of the eye. So I'm going to create a gradient here. And when I look at the gradients that are already here, I've made some for you, but you can create your own gradient too. So for the sclera part of the eye, I'm going to create a radial gradient because this is a round shape. And I want the highlight to either come from the center, or I can change which direction I want the highlight to actually come from to give a little bit of variety to my shape. But to keep it simple, I'll just start from the center. Then my gradient can add stops. I'm not going to add any stops for this one, but I am going to change the center one to white, and then I am going to change this one from this darker gray to maybe just a little bit of a lighter gray, and then I'm going to click OK. I don't like the border, so I'm going to turn the border off. Then for my iris and pupil, the pupil we already know is black, so I'm going to do that one first. And this one is the highlight, so I'm going to do that one white. And now this iris is like very boring. We're going to create a new gradient, and I'm going to use a radial gradient again from the center, but this time I'm going to add stops. So I'm going to add stops, and as I click the word add, you see that these dots start to appear. I can click and drag and change the placement of these dots, and I can also change the color of these dots. So for my spooky eyeball, because I want it to be catching your attention, I'm going to try and use these like really bright colors. So I'm going to use the yellow and the green and the cyan and maybe a couple of different yellows and the different cyans and maybe a different shade of green. And then I can drag them on here to say maybe I don't want the cyan to be so intense. Maybe I want that cyan area to be pretty small. And then I can bring these over and click OK. So once I have my iris, I can change the size of my pupil. I can change the size of my highlight. I can change all of those borders to be transparent. And if I'm looking at my iris and I don't like the iris that I've created, I think that this shade needs to be a little bit darker. And then I could always change it up a little bit more if I think some of these colors are a little bit better if I change them a bit. So it looks more like a spooky eye. Now, if you don't like the white highlight shape, you could choose a different shape for your highlight. Something that might be interesting to try besides a circle shape could be the pie shape. The pie shape could work really well too because you can adjust the highlight. So say maybe you only want the highlight to be like this. You can try a different shape for your eyes highlight. So that's how you make a spooky eyeball. So we've made a spooky eyeball. We're missing the red veining. So to make the red veining, I'm going to zoom in and show you the tool. In the toolbar, here's line. Next to line is select line. You click on select line and then you drag down to scribble tool. So we're going to use the scribble tool, not curve connector, elbow connector. We're going to use scribble tool because this is the one that's going to give us the most natural looking line. So I'm going to put my mouse back over here and zoom out. And now to make the veining on my eyes, it's going to make it look like it's kind of like the eye has some irritation. I'm going to click and drag and I'm going to make some lines. And then I'm going to change the colors of the line to red, and I'm going to make the thickness of the line a little bit more bold. And then I can go back to the scribble tool and keep going. So I'm going to make some scribbles around my eye. So they could be longer or shorter, but this is what's going to give that eye that irritated look. Ooh, I don't like where that one is placed. So I can use the arrow keys or shift with the arrow keys to try and make that fit inside a little bit more. So sometimes those veins might overlap or crisscross. All right. So just add some lines, and then to make the lines have a little bit of weight variety, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press shift and I'm going to click on some of the red lines that I've drawn. I'm going to change the border weight to a thicker line, and then some of them I'll click on and I'll make some of them a thinner line. And now my eye has a little bit more variety and depth. Now I can also take some of these and duplicate them and then change their thickness if I really like the way that some of these lines already look. And I can make them skinny. And so here's my one spooky eyeball. So far, we made the sclera, the iris, the pupil, the highlight, and the red veins. So now we need to group our eyeball all together. So to do this, make sure you're on the select tool, click and drag to select your eyeball. Then you're going to click arrange, group. Once you've grouped your eyeball, now you've got it where you could resize it. So press shift and drag it to make it small. Now you might be looking at it and thinking that some of these lines don't look right anymore now that it's small. You could always go back in and double click on some of those and bring the line weight down if that makes it better for you. But I kind of like the really irritated effect. So now that I have my grouped eyeball, I can duplicate my grouped eyeball. I can rotate my grouped eyeball, and I can even double click and see how there's two binding boxes. because there's two binding boxes, I'm clicked on the eyeball, but I'm clicked on the iris. So if I want to choose a different iris, I could go in and create a new gradient for a different iris. So maybe I'll use this purple and this yellow. Yeah, I don't like that one. Maybe this one. Okay. So now I have a new iris. It's still a spooky eyeball, but I have a new iris. So now if I want to play with size and space, I can grab this eyeball and put it in front of this other eyeball, and it's showing that one is in front of the other. But maybe this doesn't look so good. I'm going to show you some other things that we can add to our eyeballs to make them a little bit more realistic. When you click on your eyeball, when you click off your eyeball, the toolbar changes. When you're clicked on your eyeball, you should see format options. If you click on format options, you can add a drop shadow. Now, if you don't want to add the drop shadow to the entire shape, you can double click on just the circle and add the drop shadow to just the sclera part of the eye. So if you notice, if I change the distance, notice how there's only a drop shadow for the sclera part of the eye. So there's no drop shadow on the iris, the highlight, the pupil, the veins, any of that. So another thing that you can do, I'll duplicate this so that you can see the difference. You can also add a reflection. So this one already has a drop shadow, but let's add the reflection. The reflection makes a slight mirrored image of everything that was selected. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to double click on just the white sclera part of the eye and then click reflection. So that way I can have a plain eyeball, I can have an eyeball with a drop shadow, and I can have an eyeball with a reflection. So those are three different things that you might want to add. And if you don't like the drop shadow effect on this one, you can also remove the drop shadow effect completely, like that. So now we have a reflection with a drop shadow, and an eyeball. So continuing on with the other things that you need to do for your artwork, you need to choose a background color. So for background colors, you might want to create a new gradient, or you might want to create a custom gradient. For my background, because I want to make it have that spooky vibe, I'm going to try and choose hues that are darker. So maybe this cool blue violet, and it can blend into this yellowish, brownish, mustardy color. And if I don't like this gradient, like I think maybe the yellow part is too intense, I'll change the background gradient. If I go into the gradient, I can add an additional stop, and I can bring that stop lower down and make sure that it's the original color. So that way this gradient is feeling softer and moves it lower down. So here is my pieces. Now I have to remember I want my composition to allude to space. So if I take this eyeball, I can put it behind the other eyeball. I can change the colors of the irises. By double clicking. Even though they're grouped together, I can double click and I can change those gradients. And if this one is very far away, maybe it should be a lot smaller, so we can be playing with the size and the scale. And maybe this one, they can even be so large as to be cutting off of the page. This is going to really enhance the space. So it's time for you to work on your spooky eyeball. If you need any help, let me know, and I'm excited to see what you create today.